I spend a lot of time talking to cops and retired cops. And you know what? Behind every police officer is a family, especially a police spouse who really is a partner with that police officer. And so I thought I'd bring to you today a police wife who has done more than just endure what most police wives and police husbands endure. She actually has written some books about it. Janelle Newton, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Betsy. It's an honor to be here with you today.
We're so excited to talk to you. So, um, before we get into you being a police wife, um, let's talk about you were a pastor's kid, which is it's so funny. My brother's a pastor, and it's funny who we always talk about, who is either the best kids in school or the worst kids, right? It's the cops kids and the pastor's kids. Talk about
Right.
what it was like growing up as that pastor's kid.
Well, surprisingly, I think it kind of prepared me for life as a police wife. And I used to joke that I never really had my own identity. I grew up as the pastor's daughter, and then I became the policeman's wife. And I think there's a lot of scrutiny. People tend to look at you with sometimes a negative eye, and they tend to hold you up to a higher standard. And so I think there's some similarity.
That's so incredibly well said because it's really true. People look at certain professions and they expect them to be flawless. They expect them to be perfect. And then that kind of gets projected onto their family.
Yes.
So when you guys got married, was he already a cop?
Yes, he was deputy sheriff.
So you married into this whole situation knowing full well, I guess, well, not really knowing, but expecting that you were going to have a different kind of life. Talk about what it's like waiting for your police officer loved one to come home.
Well, that was a big adjustment. That was pretty hard for me when we were first married. In fact, I remember some of those early years. I would be awake. I would not sleep well while he was gone. Sometimes, I mean, this was a long time ago. We didn't even have cell phones back then. And I would page him on his pager, wondering where he was when he didn't come home on time. Sometimes I would call my parents in the middle of the night, worried and upset, and they would have to tell me, Janelle, you're going to have to get used to this. He's going to be fine. Go to sleep. So it was definitely a big adjustment, and it took some time, but I learned to sleep while he was gone, and I learned to go throughout my day while he was gone. He's worked every shift imaginable, so I just had to learn how to control my thoughts and pray for him and not worry about him, but just go on about what I needed to do.
And as a police spouse, you really learn to do pretty much everything by yourself, don't you?
You do, because there's a lot of shift work involved. And so you have to learn to manage the family and the home. And sometimes you have to do that all day. Sometimes you have to do it all night. You have to do it weekends, holidays, and just be flexible. That's probably the number one thing I would say about being a police wife is learning to be flexible.
Absolutely. Now, you guys have kids. Talk about that.
We have four boys. Our youngest just turned 15. We have a 16-year-old and a 20-year-old and a 22-year-old.
Are you encouraging them to get into police work?
Absolutely.
See, and
Absolutely.
I'm so glad to hear that because one of the things that we're lacking today is that legacy law enforcement officer, that law enforcement officer who has family in law enforcement. And so you're at some point you're likely to be a police wife and a police mom.
I would be honored for that to happen. Right now, it's a little early. No one has decided to pursue that career yet, but we do encourage it. We bring it up as often as we can without being too overbearing, you know. Um, but actually, that's one of the reasons that I wrote my new book, which I'm sure we're going to talk about in a minute. But one of the reasons I wrote it is because I wanted young people to read it as well and hopefully be inspired to pursue a life in law enforcement or a life of public service, a life as a first responder. I wanted people to realize that it is challenging, but it's also very rewarding and can be a beautiful life.
So let's talk about that, because here you are, you're raising 4 kids, and you're homeschooling, you're involved, obviously you're involved in your church, and but as though you weren't busy enough, you decided to start writing. And you didn't start with Confessions of a Police Wife. What was your first book?
My first book was Bulletproof Home, and it is a mom's guide to building an indestructible house. And what that means is, the home, the family is under attack in our culture today. And I just wanted to help women learn some of the lessons I have learned along the way. Most of them I've learned the hard way. I've learned through a lot of mistakes. But I've learned a lot of things about how to build a strong home that's going to withstand the challenges and the battles that we face. And so that's what that book is about. It's 31 building blocks. It's based on scripture, Proverbs 14:1, I believe it is, says a wise woman builds her house and a foolish woman tears it down with her own hands. So I went through a lot of things. Paul and I have had our challenges. In fact, at 9 years of marriage, we had reached the point we were living in separate bedrooms and we were talking about divorce because it is very challenging, and we were not managing all of the stresses well of law enforcement life. And we got to the point that we really had to decide, were we going to push through and stick this out? And we went through counseling for a long time, and we had to have a lot of help. We needed lifelines. We needed our families that were supportive and praying for us. We needed our church. We've always been involved in a church, and that's helped to keep us grounded. We needed counseling, and we have always had our faith in God as the foundation of our lives. And really, all of those things were the lifelines that helped us to survive life as a police family. So that is why we founded Bridge to the Badge, because we wanted to help first responders to have those lifelines. And we think that the most impactful way to do that is to get them connected with a local church. So Bridge to the Badge really exists to try to help churches and first responders connect. And we do other kinds of outreach. We do community events in our own town, and we encourage other communities to do that. But the number one goal is to get churches involved with reaching out to first responders. And so that's kind of the heart behind Bridge to the Badge.
That's so important because especially as cops and most first responders, we're very much, I don't need anybody's help. I don't want to talk about it. Yes. All of that. So when you talk about, first of all, when you were having marriage difficulties, you talk about almost having a team, right? People praying for you, involvement in a church, counseling, all those things. A lot of time cops, are like, I don't want to be involved in any of that stuff. And, so that's the first thing. And then the second thing, doing that outreach that you do, helping other police officer families and first responder families feel comfortable reaching out, because I know a lot of churches really want to do things for first responders. They just don't know what to do, right?
Yes, that is exactly right. And that is why we established Bridge to the Badge. So it gives churches the tools that they need. anybody can go to our website, and we have so much information there, so many resources, and it's really there just for people to use. It's free. There's no membership required. There's no obligation. It's just, here is how you can do it. Here are ideas. And we've seen so much success, and it can be churches of any size. We go to a large church here in town. And so for a church like that, what I've had to do is go to the missions board and present to them, this is what Bridge to the Badge is. This is what we want to do. And come up with a plan. And for a large church, they can do a lot. So we have a plan this year for our church to reach out to every first responder agency in town this year. And so that's great. Smaller churches are just as important and can do so much as well. And what we have seen, smaller churches have great success with reaching out to one station. They may choose one firehouse or one precinct, or whatever it may be. And one in particular in San Antonio, it's a very small church, but they have focused for over 2 years, reaching out every month to one little substation, and they've developed a great relationship. And those officers love them so much. They've actually given an award to the church for what they've done. So we just want to help people establish those connections so that officers know there are people out there who care. There are people out there who love us and appreciate us. And there's a safe place where I can go to get some help when I need it.
I think that's so incredibly important, because I think, and I'm sure your husband has felt this, and even you as a police wife, it can be very lonely, can it?
Yes.
Especially at 3 a.m. and you haven't heard from him. It sounds like you're helping people really combat that isolation, if you will, of
Yes.
the first responder.
Very much so. And it can be a very lonely life if you let it be. And I was there. I had done that. I had kept myself very private. And, it's kind of a protection, especially in law enforcement. We tend to feel the need to build walls around our family to protect us. And that's true to a certain extent. But I was very isolated and very alone, and I felt like nobody understood. Nobody knows what life is like for us. But that's really not true. And that's one of the reasons that I wrote Confessions of a Police Wife as well, because I wanted to draw in first responder spouses to realize you are part of a huge family, and we all deal with the same things, and you are not alone. And it's called Confessions of a Police Wife because I am a police wife. I write from my perspective, but really the principles apply to all of us. And whether you're in a law enforcement family or not, whether you're a man or a woman or anybody really, I believe, can get something from this book. I've had people responding to me as they have been reading it and telling me how much it meant to them. And they're from all different walks of life. So I think for the spouse of a law enforcement officer, though, it is very important to find some community. And so in the book, Confessions of a Police Wife, I invited a lot of other police wives to contribute to the book. So it's not just by me, it's actually by 15 of us. And many of them lead organizations. Like I lead Bridge to the Badge. Many of these police wives lead organizations that are for first responder spouses and for the whole family. So that is all highlighted in the book. So if someone gets this book, they're actually getting connected with a whole lot of resources for first responder families.
And this book, although it's called Confessions of a Police Wife, isn't just for police wives, right?
No, it's for everyone. It really is. I want people who are law enforcement officers to read it because I want them to be reminded what an honorable profession they are in. And I want them to know that we see them, we see what they do every day, and we appreciate them and we need them. I want spouses to read it and know that they are not alone, but they're part of a big family and we all are in this together. I want young people to read it and be inspired to step into their calling to be a first responder. And I want older people to read it and be encouraged that the world is not all dark and falling apart. You know, most of what we see on the news would leave us completely discouraged. But reading this book, I think, will help open people's eyes to all the things that we don't see on the news, but that there are thousands of men and women all over the country that are doing the right thing every day in our homes and out on the streets. There are law enforcement officers that are working hard and standing up for what's right and doing the right thing every day. We just don't always see it. We don't always hear about it.
Talk about what it was like as a police wife in the summer of 2020. What was that like from a family perspective?
It was brutal. It really was. I think that was probably one of the most painful summers of my life. And it really is the catalyst that pushed me to do something. I wrote an article the other day about why I wrote Confessions of a Police Wife, and I explained that that really started back in 2016. So I got to back up a little bit more. 2016 is when 5 officers were ambushed and killed in Dallas, which is only 2 hours from me. And that really shook my world and it broke my heart. And I was at a turning point there. Am I going to sink further down into isolation and depression and fear? Or am I going to step up and do something? And that's when I made my first ever of my life public post on social media. And I wrote an article and posted it on my social media page, which was called, "Does Your Husband Wear a Gun on His Side and a Badge on His Heart?" And that is one of the first chapters in the book, Confessions of a Police Wife. So it started back then in 2016, and just that passion, that fire inside of me that felt like I have to say something, I have to do something. People need to understand what law enforcement really is and what law enforcement officers stand for and what their families are going through. So that grew and grew. And then in 2020, I kind of reached a turning point again, and I almost took down all of my social media, deleted, I had actually saved all of my photos because I was about to delete everything and say, forget it, go back into the shell, go back into hiding, go back into full protection mode. But I felt convicted in my heart about that no, now more than ever is when we need to step up and we need to speak up and we need to reach out, because if I am feeling hurt and I'm feeling alone and I'm feeling afraid, how much more are other people who don't have the lifelines that I have? So we need to help them. We need to reach out. We need to help them find the lifelines to help them get through this.
What made you decide to do the honor cards? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So Bridge to the Badge began with prayer meetings. There was a mom of a police officer and myself as the wife of a police officer. We were meeting and praying every week, just praying for our law enforcement in our country. And in one of those meetings, when we were praying for the families of fallen officers, we just wanted to do something. And we were talking about it. What can we do? And this mom who was there with me, she is a very special friend, and she lost an adult child several years ago. And she commented how much it means when the anniversary is remembered. And so that's really where the thought started. We said, how can we honor the families of these officers? Because people don't realize how many officers we lose. Because it's usually not mentioned in the media. And so we were seeing that there are so many officers dying in the line of duty. And we decided that one way we could reach out and honor their families is at the 1-year anniversary of their death. We send an honor card, and it's a handwritten note from one of our volunteers, and it's mailed to the police department that they worked for, and then that department will deliver it to the family. And we have received so many notes of appreciation from the families. It's been unbelievable. Sometimes we get notes from the chief of the department. We've received notes from the New York State Superintendent of Police, from Sheriff Grady Judd. We've received overwhelming response because that family is honored when they realize 1 year later, their loved one is still being remembered and honored, and their family is prayed for, and they are not forgotten.
That's so incredibly important. Janelle, where can people find you? Where can they buy the books? Where can they learn more about all you're doing?
Okay, well, Bridge to the Badge has a website. It is bridgetothebadge.org. And my books can be found on Amazon. You can go to Amazon/author/Janelle Newton. And that will take you to all of my books. I do have Facebook and Instagram for Bridge to the Badge and Janelle Newton Author.
That is fantastic. Janelle, we can't thank you enough for spending time with us today. And if you'd like more information about the National Police Association, visit us at nationalpolice.org.
Are you passionate about supporting law enforcement? The National Police Association is on a mission to strengthen our communities, protect our families, and ensure justice prevails. But they need your help. Every dollar you donate makes a difference. It funds the legal defense of police officers and police agencies, supports advocacy for pro-law enforcement legislation, and funds community outreach programs and education. Imagine safer streets, stronger bonds between officers and neighborhoods, and a brighter future for all. Join us. Visit our website at nationalpolice.org to donate today.